Meeting of Tuesday, May the 10th, and it is my pleasure to welcome Richmond Fire Chief Jim Wishlove and Richmond RCMP OIC Chief Superintendent Jave Chohan to their first in-person Community Safety Committee meeting. Welcome. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of April 12th are here for approval. Were there any errors or omissions? Is there a mover? Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The next committee meeting is set for June 14th at 4 p.m. in council chambers. Are there any additions to the agenda? All right. Item number 1, Community Bylaws, Animal Protection Services Monthly Activity Report, March 2022. And good afternoon, Ms. Lloyd. Anything to add to your report?
Clear now.
Okay, perfect. All right, we are on agenda item number 1, Community Bylaws Animal Protection Services Monthly Activity Report for March 2022. Good afternoon, Ms. Lloyd. Anything to add to your or highlight?
Nothing to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Councillor Liu, you have a question?
Thank you for this report. We're excited to see that lots of work is happening. And we're excited to see that the shelter is opening this month, apparently. So looking forward to that. And I think it'll be pretty special to have this local art by students in the facility as well. So I think there's lots of great things coming forward with this.
Thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, just a quick question. I don't have a dog, so I'm not as sure if we have dog waste only bins, but I see them at Metro Vancouver parks beside the garbage and the recycling, and I see it in some other municipalities. And then on page 11, it talks about responsible deposition of your dog waste. So what's the city's stance on those dog waste only collection?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, dog waste receptacles are overseen by the Parks Department. Currently, the dog waste is placed in the receptacles that are outside of the parks and dike areas, which is then collected by the garbage department.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report, thorough as always. I'm also excited to see the new shelter, and I understand they'll be opening up this month, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. One of the things we talked about when we were designing the new shelter was an opportunity to bring in volunteers from the homeless shelter, which is just around the corner from the animal shelter. And we talked about that this could be a positive experience for those folks, making them feel engaged in the community. And of course, it was always nice to get more volunteers. Was any action ever taken on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I would be happy to follow up with the SPCA as they will be overseeing the volunteers at the shelter.
Okay, great. And they could connect with the Salvation Army then?
That's correct. I can speak to the shelter manager and have them connect with the Salvation Army and follow up with that.
Good. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to help everybody else. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I don't see any more hands up for question. It's been moved. The recommendation in the package has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 2, Property Use and Parking Enforcement Monthly Activity Report, March 2022. Mr. Crotto, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to the chair. Nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
All right, any questions from committee? Councillor Hobbs. Oh, sorry. Councillor Hobbs.
Yep, just waiting for the mic.
Yeah.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thanks for the report. This is a very important report, actually, and it's important for neighborhoods and communities in terms of quality of life and kind of piece of the neighborhood. So I'm just curious, on page 16, I think it is, when we're looking at the percentage of calls for service, and we talk about complaint-driven calls and proactive calls. So I was just wondering, like for unsightly premises as an example, are you able to say what percentage of calls are dealt with as a result of a complaint versus proactive enforcement? Do you have that kind of data?
To the chair, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I don't have that data at my ready. I can get back in the form of a memo and report back. Anecdotally, I can say that the majority of calls for service are complaint driven. They're not proactively driven.
Yeah, and I don't mean to create work, so I don't even think that's necessary for me. But it leads me to the second part of the question. So can you just describe what I think I probably already know, but maybe for the public, what is the process, the public process for people lodging a complaint for, say, an unsightly premise or something else? And then the key part of it is, what's the awareness that the public has? And I know it's hard for you to say, so that has to do with the process that you're probably going to explain. Because sometimes I have to say, when I talk to members of the public, which I happen to do today, their awareness of how to complain about something in their neighborhood, say an unsightly premise, is difficult. They don't seem to know. So can you describe the process and what your understanding is of the level of awareness that the public has as to that process?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. So the process can take the form of a phone call through to the bylaw request and through the city lines. So then we'll get forwarded on to the bylaw department, which will have an intake process. So there'll be a person taking the call and walking the complainant through the details of whether they're asserting, and then generally speaking, if it's founded, it'll result in the dispatch of a bylaw enforcement officer. This also can be done through an email. It also can be done through the website as well. So there are multiple different methods that they can bring forward a complaint. When they do reach a city customer service or a bylaw request administrative personnel, they're then given that there's that dialogue, they're walked through the bylaws. In terms of the public's understanding of all the bylaws, it varies. We do have some complainants that are extremely well informed, and we have others that are not. So it's really difficult to gauge what the general awareness is. But most often people seem to raise a complaint when they see if something is really unsightly, if it is extremely out of the ordinary from the surrounding properties. That cues them to say that this is something that needs to be done in action.
Yeah, fair comment. And just to be clear, I mean, the people that I've talked to about such incidents have been really happy with the service they've received from the city once they draw it to the city's attention or get through. And just one last question or clarification, if I could, through the chair, and that's on page 20 at the top. I think it's the actual for false alarms. And I mean, false alarms are the bane of many people's existence. So the zero just kind of jumped out at me there. So that's great if it is a zero.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, this reflects revenue, so there likely were calls. It's just a lagging indicator, and this happens to be just a bit of processing time. But I suspect that in the coming months, we will see some of the revenue reflected for that.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair and to staff, I just wanted to bring up from the last public hearing, there were some comments made by a resident in the Spires Road area, and there was some discussion that it would be referred to this committee. And the two specific items were people parking on boulevards and during the wet season making mud pits when they leave because there's a lack of parking or due to construction going on. And then the other aspect to that was construction vehicles blocking the one or two only ways in and out of neighborhoods. Have staff done a bit of an assessment of Spires Road and the way the boulevards are being treated there? I know in other areas where there's townhouses or single-family homes, people do park on their property and do, in other words, also drive through boulevards to get to that front yard. So what is the city's handle on how boulevards are being used or misused?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, the staff have looked into this issue, and we do work with our building engineering department to ensure that there isn't, in this instance, there was an allegation that there was mud drug across the road. It's an important distinction, though. In certain properties, there is a boulevard, and in other properties, there is a shoulder. And what differentiates a shoulder and a boulevard is if there's a curb. So where there is a shoulder, it is permitted to park on the shoulder. It is not, however, permitted to park on a boulevard. In this instance, this was a case of where there was a shoulder. However, what was being alleged is that there were big ruts that were being generated from the vehicles that were chewing up this shoulder and then taking that mud along the roads. And in this instance, it's a case where staff works together to work with these construction companies to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But I think it's important to differentiate between a shoulder and a boulevard. A boulevard is not permitted to park on, but a shoulder it is.
All right, thanks for that clarification. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a couple questions. So on CS20, the soil fees are down by $54,000, and do we have fewer applications, or people just aren't getting around to getting the work done?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I was wondering if we could repeat. I'm not getting the
A
audio.
little bit slow on the pushing the button. Sorry about that.
My apologies. On CS20, bylaw soil permit fees, fines and fees, the year-to-date budget would be 81,000. The actual is 27,000. So there's a big difference, and it says just less soil has been moved. But is there a reason behind that? Are there fewer applications for it? Or are people not able to get the soil they want? Was it raining too? Like, what was happening?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, what we see in this table is the reflection of the fact that seasonality wasn't built into the estimates. So as this was the first time we collected revenue regarding soil permits, we just did a straight line accounting. We anticipate in the next year or two, we will get it to reflect more seasonality. So I can foreshadow that the revenue is increasing as the warmer months are opening up. And you will see that reflected, for example, in April's report. So there is a gap, but that is because we chose just a straight line month-to-month equal revenue, which is not really reflective of how the seasonality works and the actual permits as they come in.
Okay, so people are still getting the same kind of levels of permits generally and everything else. Okay. And then
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, that's correct.
Okay, and then my next question is probably not necessarily to you, it might be more for Mrs. Sham, but I'm wondering if for all of the bylaws we get reports on, can we get reports on the warnings issued? I know that there's a number of warnings that get issued to people for bylaw things. And I know it's going to start applying to the plastic ban, that we're going out and just doing this. So there's clearly a lot of work being done, and I think it would be helpful for us to see the work that's being done. I think also that the public wants to know that we're out there doing the work, but then at the same time, they want to know that we're reasonable and compassionate when it's somebody's first time, or that, you know, we're not being heavy-handed with the rules, but we're still out there enforcing the rules. So I think that might be a handy thing. I know that we get information from the RCMP about how many lockout notices that they give out, and how many speed watch notices they give out. And so if we had similar information, I think that might be helpful for us and for the public.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. The plastic ban, we will work with our colleagues in the engineering department because, you know, that's over there. And then I believe that I'll work with Mr. Corrado and, you know, do the some statistics if we haven't been keeping them, because sometimes we just issue letters or just a verbal warning. So if we haven't been keeping those stats, we'll go for it and start collecting some of that stats.
Okay, and like even if it's a verbal warning, there must be some sort of stat, right? Like you come in at the end of your shift, you might, well, what'd you do all day?
Yeah.
Well, I just talked to people. It's like, okay, well, be good to know. Thank you.
All right, that looks like that's all the questions for agenda item number 2. There is a recommendation in the package.
Move recommendation.
It's moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 3, business license activity report, first quarter 2022. Mr. Corrado.
To the chair, I have nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day.
CS24, which is the expired licenses. And it appears as though in Q1 in 2022, there were 1,034 expired licenses. And then in also Q1 in 2021, there was 1,318 expired licenses. Is this a COVID trend, or is this a yearly trend that, you know, people just go out of business and don't renew in January?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, there is a yearly trend. This could be businesses that have just not renewed, have gone out of business. We do see this uptick at the beginning of Q1. I will note that there's a positive indicator that it is down in Q1 versus 2022 versus Q1 of 2021. So that is an indicator that there were fewer expired licenses. So it is an indicator of health in the economy.
Okay, that's good to know. That's very good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, the recommendation has been moved. Sorry, Councillor McNulty, did you have a question?
Yeah, just curious on the ride hailing. How were the fines from the transportation branch administered? Do they have people out on patrol? I see the city of Richmond on page 25.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, these fines are administered with the passenger transportation branch and staff, along with transit police or RCMP and joint operations. For the provincial fines, those are administered by PTB staff themselves. They're actually peace officers. And the city staff actually issue the city's bylaw fines at point as well.
What is a follow-up, if I may? We've taken some stances here at Community Safety, trying to educate people, trying to let them know what they're getting, what kind of situation they're getting into when they go with illegal ride hailing. What is the PTB doing to educate the general public? I never see anything in the paper or any warnings or advertising. You know, a little video on television would probably deter a lot of people from getting in there. And the other thing is, we don't ever hear, unless it's a very serious incident, we don't ever hear of incidences of, I'll call it misuse of same in the community. When we had one of our own businesses in Richmond tried to educate us in terms of young women getting into these cars and not speaking the language and et cetera. So do they have an educational program?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, currently there is no broad education program regarding which companies are legal and which companies are not. And these issues were raised to the PTB by a intermunicipal business license group, and there was some traction with the province. They were open to increasing their education aspects. There was some targeted education at source at the airport, at YVR, but there was a general consensus that this needed to be broader.
Okay, I would agree with you too, because I think they need to strengthen their enforcement of what existing rules that they have. And but they also need to, it might be something we may look at, and maybe through the RCMP, we may be able to hear if there are any issues reported to them or to any of our community safety people. I think it's important, given this day and age. I hate to see it on Global or CBC or whatever, an issue with some unsuspecting person, not somebody that's knowingly using it, but somebody that innocently thinks that this is a taxi cab. Anyhow, thank you.
All right, so we'll get back to, there's a recommendation in the package. I believe it was moved and seconded. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 4, Touchstone Family Association Restorative Justice contract renewal 2023 to 2025, and annual performance outcome evaluation report. Good afternoon, Mr. Liu, and I understand that we have Ms. Velsonis from Touchstone. She's here with us today and is available to answer questions. So, Mr. Liu.
Good afternoon, Ms. Chair. I have nothing to add to the report, but we have Executive Director Judy Veloso from Touchstone Family Association, and we are able to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of questions. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Other than the photograph of the AGM report, I just want to say that this, I have nothing on the report. Thank you very much for the report. But more importantly, historically, when we signed in to restorative justice, was probably one of the best moves the city ever made. And to use Touchstone to continue with the program of the day, I just want to say huge thank you to them for it. I mean, the page 28 just speaks for itself to Judy and the other Douglas, the other delegation. I think it needs to be taken back. My comments especially, who was around for the original way back when it came, I just thank you for the efforts, and thank you on behalf of the public, but more importantly, thank you on behalf of the clients that made mistakes in judgment, and you were able to hopefully rectify them and take them on the way to make them better citizens. So from that perspective, just a huge thank you and a rah-rah for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNulty. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I was looking at the chart on page 48, and it shows the trends of how many cases are resolved, and it's amazing to see the trends from 2014 at 46, 2016 at 67 cases, only 13 cases in 2020, obviously because of COVID, and last year just 22 cases. So, and I noticed that on the next page, on page 51, that the wages have been the same, like about $83,000 a year. So during COVID, was there other ways that the staff were helping people in these situations?
Thanks, Councillor Day. Yes, we actually, through United Way as well, are in the elementary schools right now. And even with COVID, Richmond elementary schools did open, so programming was running. So we've developed a leadership skills group for young children around ages 10 to 12, where the, we don't get the volume of kids that we'd like, but that's getting better because that's about the district's amount of people in one room. Although that number is increasing, and we're in McNeely Elementary, Mitchell Elementary, and I believe starting in Tatum as well. Plus some of the high schools in terms of mock forums and education of young people, as well as going to watches and staying in contact with the school RCMP liaisons. So there's lots of other pieces, but it also took a lot of effort to when we did do a forum, to creatively do the form in a safe manner. Sometimes it was a hybrid, so sort of what you're doing right now with part Zoom, part in person. Other times it was in person, and it wasn't safe to do real circles, so we'd have kind of creative systems set up in our room, like plexiglass and people behind tables. And COVID certainly gave us lots of different challenges, but it also took much more time. Hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, it does, because I wondered if there was a surplus because, there were so few cases, but it sounds to me like you pivoted, that you just took your resources and used them in another way, which is, how you run a successful business too. If you can't sell widgets, you sell gadgets, and it sounds like that's exactly what you did. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, I support the recommendation, and just want to say a couple comments and one question. I mean, restorative justice is a very effective tool, so I appreciate that. And the report I thought was very good. As I read through it and thought of questions, you ended up answering the question on the next page, so it was hard to think of too many. But I would like to point out just the recidivism rate of 11%. I think that's pretty remarkable, actually. So that was very good. I thought the analysis was excellent. When you get on to one of the feedback form pages, I think, and it notes that participants were, I think, offenders were 34%, and offender supporters were 34%, and victims 19%, and victim supporters 7%. So that's not quite balanced, and there might be an explanation for that. But I imagine the goal would be to get it to be more of a similar number, or is it just mathematically that's the way that would work out?
Thank you for the question. It would depend year to year, quite honestly. So some of the victims in this particular case were schools, so teachers or principals, so they wouldn't come with a supporter, as opposed to when a child's harmed or another person in community is harmed, they would come with their parent as a supporter. So sometimes it depends on who the victim is in the case. So that was more common in this particular year than it has been in previous years. The offenders usually will at least equal the number of offenders in terms of supporters, and that's because it's rare that we'll do a form if their parent or some adult isn't there to support them. The victim, it would depend. If it's a young person, they would have a parent for sure, but if it was an adult, they might choose not to. And so that's why you'll see that fluctuation. And if I did an analysis on reports year to year, we would see that number completely fluctuate.
Okay, well, thanks.
Thank
you, that makes sense. Just a couple other comments in the strat plan. I really liked number 3 and number 4 involving schools and community groups. I think that's really smart and kind of goes hand in glove with restorative justice. And my last comment is just your pie charts on page 43. I think the favorable comments are a good indication and very strong. So I think that bodes well for the program. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I was just doing the math, looking that it started, the city formed the partnership with Touchstone in 2008. So, we're completed 14 years with Touchstone. So I think the city of Richmond really recognizes the value that we receive with our partnership with you. And that, as Councillor Hobbs mentioned, there are outcomes that are measured and that we can see how successful we are. And in our report on CS30, it was good to see, and I know this is something we've talked about and advocated for different streams of funding many times over the years. So it was good to see that there has been some supplemental funding through the civil forfeiture grants, and that there is potential opportunity for other funding. And so just to staff, if there's anything that you need from committee or council, if you need letters of endorsement, please let us know, because I know that we really truly believe this is a real benefit to our community. So, and thank you to Touchstone for all the work that you do. Yep. Are there any other questions from committee? All right. There is a recommendation in the package. Yeah. Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. Item number 5, Richmond Fire Rescue Monthly Activity Report, March 2022. Good afternoon, Fire Chief.
Madam Chair.
Anything you'd like to add or highlight?
I have nothing further to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Are there any questions from committee? All right, seeing none, there is a recommendation in our package. Oh, Councillor McNulty, did you have a?
Curious, on our page 57, it appears that the number of medical calls have just shot up. Are we doing any more that maybe BC Ambulance should have gone by, or are these any of these calls in parallel with them at a site? That we're the first responders there, then the ambulance comes in.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, thank you. Yes, this is an indicator of a number of things. Pre-COVID, of course, yes. We were responding to a very similar number of calls such as this. And of course, as we know, BC Ambulance Dispatch changed some of our response protocols yes. As a risk management measure. That's slowly coming back to the pre-COVID norms. These calls for service are calls that are well within our capacity to respond to, and our people are trained to that, and the ambulance service does respond. We are first responders in these calls.
Well, I'm glad you're able to respond, and thank you for the men and women for what they're doing. Thank you.
All right, there is a recommendation in the package. Is there
There's a
mover?
recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded, thank you. I'll call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried, thank you. And item number 6, the fire chief briefing. Anything to share with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 points I just want to share with you and your committee. First off, just this past weekend at RFR number 1 Fire Hall, we held a capstone event for the end of Emergency Preparedness Week. We had an open house, and we had many of our emergency service partners from both the city and external and in the region. And over the course of the afternoon, we estimate between 800 and 1,000 residents visited, so it was very steady. Although for a first live event post-COVID, we were quite happy with the spacing and the air and that. And it also has led to a significant number of training and collaboration opportunities with some of our local partners in the city as well.
Oh, that's outstanding.
And the other item that I want to bring to your attention is Richmond Fire Rescue is going to participate in June, on the 4th and 5th of June, with the City of Richmond's Open Doors event. And so we will again hold another 2 open houses at number 1 Fire Hall, showcasing our newest equipment, our newest qualified trained people, and our abilities to tackle wildfires and some of the unique things that are happening. I will follow up with a memo to Mayor and Council with that, with all the details closer to the date of the event.
Well, that's great, and I'm sure everybody will be happy to come and visit you again, and doors open. Councillor Day, you had a question? Oh, let me hang on. Put you on here.
Able to open up for the Public Works open house that's so popular in Richmond, and Suzanne Bycroft, the manager in that department, said that she was going to work with the fire department to potentially have some public work type of events in coinciding with your events. Did that happen, or is that about to happen?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, it happened in a very big way. The Public Works team showed up and actually created a cross-section example of a dike in the backyard, as well as demonstrated their ability to make mass sandbags, and showed a lot of their diking and emergency response pieces. And truly, in some of those events, that staff, they are the first responders to those events. RFR would support them, certainly.
That's great.
So the Public Works teams did show up quite significantly, and are going to continue to do so.
It's great to see the various departments all working together as one team. Thank you very much.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you for the public outreach work you've been doing. I know that many members of the Jewish community were very pleased to have the burning of the chametz for Passover. And I think the kids always appreciate being able to come in, and now that COVID's kind of gone away, being able to come and touch and see and feel and talk to you and your staff and all the firefighters to come into the stations. It's pretty fun for them and educational as well. So thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Item number 7, RCMP Monthly Activity Report, March 2022. Good afternoon, Chief Superintendent. Anything that you'd like to add on to or highlight?
Thank you to the Chair. I have reviewed the March 2022 monthly stat reports and have noted that the number of cases in most categories have increased. However, I can report that no specific trends or patterns have been noted. For these increases, these numbers do fluctuate on a weekly and a monthly basis, but we will be looking at our latest CompStat reports to identify all the hotspots areas and take measured approach response to address any public safety concerns and to bring the crime rates down in those areas. I don't have anything else to add to the report, but I'm open to take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions from committee? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair, just one question for Chief Superintendent. On our page CS 75, that's the monthly statistics page, and under one of the ones that was highlighted in red was the other criminal code. So I'm sure that's like a potpourri of items. Was there any trend in what types of other criminal code offenses were added to that?
Yes, thank you for that question to Councillor Wolf through the chair. For the other criminal code, I know that we had significant increase in this reporting period, especially for cause disturbance incidents, which comprised about 66% of all of our files. And I would attribute that to probably the COVID-19 restrictions that are continuing to lift, and there's more and more people are out and about, and more timing, more openness, which is resulting in some of these incidents which have risen.
Great, thank you.
I was interested to note the drug file, how that's increased and how 95% is attributed to the airport, and I guess with more people traveling now. And so that would be the detachment out at the airport. And how many, so would officers from inside of, like from Greater Richmond then be helping them with that, given that there's so many cases, that's a couple a day?
Through the chair, yes, the numbers have increased, and 95% of the files are from the airport, and that is due to the increase in traffic. The traffic has doubled since last year, so more and more illicit drugs are coming in, which are being intercepted by CBSA authorities as well as Canada Post. So it's being taken care of at that point, and I don't believe that the Richmond RCMP members are engaged in that. That's taken care of with the members who are already posted there.
All right, that's good to hear. Thank you. I don't see any more questions from committee. There is a recommendation in our package. Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Number 8, the RCMP OIC briefing. Anything to share with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to first thank Superintendent Julie Drotar for maintaining the operations following Assistant Commissioner Willing's departure. And until my arrival to the detachment last week, she has done a tremendous job, and I'm very thankful for all that she has done. I'm also very pleased to report that in March of 2022, of the 4 largest municipalities policed by the RCMP in the Lower Mainland District, Richmond had the lowest violent crime rate and the second lowest property crime rate. And finally, our volunteers are now starting to come out, and those numbers are increasing, which is very nice to see. On Saturday, our volunteers and our members participated in the emergency preparedness event at Fire Hall number 1. This week, there is volunteer participation with the Speed Watch campaign, and there are many other events that are planned for the coming weeks and months. And I look forward to participating in as many events as possible with our volunteers, and also to be able to personally express my appreciation to them for the excellent work that they're doing for our great city. That's it for me.
Well, that's really good to hear. I think all of committee has, been looking to see when they would be able to return, given COVID and provincial health regulations. And I know that we all value the work that our volunteers do. So that's really good to hear. Any questions of the OIC? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. Moving along to Councillor Day has a motion here, number 9, card hailing fines for passengers. Councillor Day, did you want to speak to your motion? Sure, go ahead.
Okay, that a letter be written to the province requesting an examination of the penalties for passengers using illegal ride-hailing services, and that staff be directed to raise the possibility of penalties for passengers using illegal ride-hailing service to the Intermunicipal Business License Advisory Working Group. And the reason I brought this up is it's becoming an increasing problem to the point that we even have our own MLA, Henry Yao, was at Lansdowne Mall when he pulled up and some lady got into the back of his car. And he was shocked to see this happen. And recently, Minister Rob Fleming was quoted as saying, "We are looking into options for enforcement." So I think just putting this on the table is, it just couldn't be at a better time since it's already on the province's radar.
Any questions from committee? No, it hasn't been moved yet, but we can take questions first. Hang on just a sec. Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, I asked earlier about the fines that are putting in, and I'm not sure I can support beating up on passengers that may be unaware of what they're getting into. And I'm just wondering if any activity should be done, whether, correct me if I'm wrong, to staff, does this not come under the PTP, or PTB, I should say?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty. The enforcement of ride-hailing is principally done by the PTB, so that would require a legislative change at the provincial level.
Well, I guess my question here is to, if we do anything, is ask them to come up with stronger enforcement of the existing rules and review the rules with regard to illegal ride-hailing. From my perspective, that would be a better way than, since it is under provincial jurisdiction with them, I don't know that, what can we do that specifically? I think we've heard a lot about ride-hailing along the way, and we're beating up on the passenger. That's not the person we need to be beating up on if you wish you're getting off the road. It's the illegal drivers, the training or not a training, this, that, and the other thing, the assaults that probably have occurred there that have been unreported, the extortion. Those are the kinds of issues that should be be looked at, the whole aspect of it. So I guess that's why I come through the chair. If we were to do anything, I think we need something more direct and more forceful to the powers that be. I think many people, I had a guy walks down the street from my 4 doors down from and comes to my place because I have a decent driveway, and a car stops in front and they look into my house to see if I'm coming. So I walk out and I say, you don't belong here, and I'm taking your license number down, and they're gone. So that, you know, it is an issue. And I think if people knowingly utilize it, fine. But for passengers that are not knowingly, I think we're looking to penalize the wrong persons.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hobbs.
Yeah, you would know.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I've had people turn my mic off before. Thank you, and through the chair. I mean, I appreciate that, this is a serious issue, and we have had presentations on it before from people involved related to other industries that are related to it. And so I appreciate the intent of trying to get a handle on it and deal with it more effectively. But I do have some concerns with the idea of penalizing people who are using the service, because in essence, you know, you're talking about penalizing people who are, in many cases, if not in all cases, being victimized themselves without knowledge. And the thing about issuing tickets to passengers, which can be done for a couple different things, but usually, you know, you'd be issuing a ticket to the driver or the operator of a vehicle, because tickets are, you know, they generally fit into a category called strict liability offenses. And basically, in a nutshell, that means that, you know, you don't have to prove their knowledge. So if you get into a situation where you're talking about establishing somebody knowingly using a service, well, that changes the idea of issuing a ticket. I mean, when a police officer writes somebody a ticket for going through a red light, proving that they knew they went through a red light isn't part of the essential elements of that case. You just have to establish that they did. So I have some concerns about that, and usually strict liability offenses are regulatory in nature, and traffic things usually fit into those. So in addition to that, victims generally aren't held responsible for that kind of thing. You essentially go after the operator of the vehicle or the operator of the company, and that is at a whole different level. And then when you get into the idea of issuing tickets to passengers who maybe are primarily coming from the airport or something, I mean, you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who are from out of town, a lot of tourists, a lot of students, a lot of people who don't necessarily reside in Canada, let alone BC or Richmond. So the ability for them to contest that gets problematic as well. So I think the Passenger Transportation Board is the place to go. And I would support this if it was a bit more broad and didn't say whatever the wording is about going after the victims. Like if we were just asking them to look at this issue and come up with strategies or tactics or enforcement measures or legislative changes that could more effectively address the issue of illegal ride-hailing, then I would support that. But as it's written right now, targeting the passengers, although I get the intent, it's not something I'd support generally for the reasons that I've already outlined. Thank you.
So the reason I've let this continue, I know it hasn't been moved and seconded, is because of some of the discussion that we're having. This is something that has come across our table several times, and we have been concerned about it. And I think, the work that we've done up till now has been about protecting the passenger, looking after the vulnerable people who may be scammed or perhaps not even safe in some of these illegal ride-hailing things. So I think it's a good discussion. I think, Councillor Day, maybe you can listen to the conversation and maybe there's some wording you may want to consider. Councillor Liu.
It occurs to me that YVR has a program whereby taxis have to go through a certain corral in order to get through and do business there. And anyone trying to do business at YVR has to go through a vetting process. I'm wondering if we should go to our liaison, our YVR liaison, Dan Nomura, and get him to bring this up with YVR and ask them what they're doing about people basically running businesses at YVR without YVR's permission. I think they need to also look at this, right? So there's things that certainly we could do. We could put up signs and say these are the ones vetted by Richmond, but if it's happening kind of somewhere outside of our jurisdiction, and we have a liaison person, I think it's worthwhile just at least putting this out to Mr. Nomura and asking him to bring it forward with YVR, because I think it does make sense. I don't know that running around trying to give tickets to people who are potentially the victims of this situation, I agree with Councillor Hobbs and Councillor McNulty that certainly if someone's knowingly breaking the rules and going to somebody that's operating outside of the rules, then they should be penalized. But trying to put that onus on our own bylaw officers is maybe far more work than is reasonable. So, but I do think that if a lot of this is being generated at the airport, I think the airport then has some responsibility, but also, if I'm running the airport and only every other business has to pay in to the airport to do business there, then the same should probably hold true for the ride-hailing companies, is what I'm thinking as well. And I think we want to know that our YVR is a safe place, and so YVR needs to be making sure that it's not turning into, some of those places where you've gone in other countries where strange things happen at the airports and somebody picks you up and takes you where you don't want to go or anything else, right? So I think we want to make sure that the integrity of our airport is maintained.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair, a question to staff, and then I'll probably comment or two after. But I guess the question is kind of raised by Councillor Hobbs there. He probably knows many of these situations, but could staff just elaborate on what are situations where passengers can get ticketed?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not aware of any circumstances under the city's bylaws where a passenger would be ticketed. I would have to defer to my colleagues from the RCMP to see if there are any instances under the Motor Vehicle Act where a passenger would be ticketed, but I'm not aware of.
Oh, okay. If there is someone else on the call, they can jump in, cut me off. Otherwise, I'll just elaborate here. So I was thinking of situations where, like the limo buses or the party buses are used, and there's underage drinking or people doing things illegal on there. Are those passengers also liable because they're having behaviors that are not allowable on the roadway? And then another situation, because I like this, the motion, trying to be creative and address issues with the gig economy, that is coming up, and we're dealing with new things. And I think it's important that we help staff be prepared and have the tools to deal with it. And I'm also thinking of situations like the Airbnb. So sure, the operator or the owner of the site, it could be liable, but also if it's the users, like the passengers in the vehicle, are doing the things illegal, that there should be tools to address that behavior and correct that as well. So although I can't vote on this, I'm supportive of the wording that it is, because I don't think it is too onerous or too harsh on the passengers. So I'll leave it at that, and unless there's a staff who can comment further on any of that.
Was there any comment from the Chief Superintendent? Anything come to mind, or would you need to do some work on it?
Yes, thank you for that. To Councillor Hobbs, through the chair. The only motor vehicle infraction that immediately comes to mind, if the passenger is failing to wear a seatbelt, that is a ticketable offense.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Day. You've heard the conversation around the table. Did you want to move your motion and see if there's a seconder, or do you have some suggested changes?
What it says is just raise the possibility of penalties for passengers. It's just raising awareness.
Okay, so did you want to move it and see if there's a seconder?
Yes, please.
Okay, the recommendation in the package has been moved. Is there a seconder? Okay, so there is no seconder. Oh, sorry. Councillor Steves, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'll second it. Yeah.
All right, it has been seconded.
Yeah, so I'd like to speak to it. I mean, like I said, I'm not saying that we're going to send our bylaw officers out and start handing out tickets. That was not the intention of this. It is simply that staff be directed to raise the possibility of penalties to passengers. Because I think that as Minister Fleming pointed out, they are looking into every option they can for enforcement. And they may not be aware of what's happening in Richmond. And my worry is that if we don't do something, a nightmare could happen. And I'm envisioning, luckily when MLA Henry Yao had a young lady jump into the back of his car. I mean, what if that had been someone who was, a predator? I worry about things like rape and burglary. I think that we need to do everything we can to protect the public, and just putting this forward to the Passenger Transportation Board at least lets them know what's happening here in Richmond. And when it comes to YVR, they've caught people, security have caught people coming in and getting ride-hailing jobs, like getting people that they then take out to their cars. So they're on top of it. They're already dealing with it. So if the members of this committee would like to modify it, I'm open to that. This is just to open the door to discussion, as the chair pointed out.
Councillor McNulty. Well, the motion is on the floor now as it stands. Councillor McNulty.
I think the discussion we've talked about was, first of all, the PTB are the culprits giving out in dealing with this issue, as Mr. Coronado said earlier. That's where we've got to get to, and then we've got to ask them to come up with stronger enforcement of what rules we have. And to be honest with you, provide an educational program for the public. And there should be ads out there that don't do this, We've got things coming out, from province with fraud and schemes, et cetera, when they happen. I think that's the way to go. And let's be proactive if we're going to do something and deal with the rules and regulations as they are. I'm in favor of eliminating ride-hailing totally. We know what the issues are, but let's be productive in terms of what we're trying to get to. It's not my motion, so I only can suggest, I'm with Councillor Hobbs, a broader area and to come out with advertisements. Enforcement's one thing, but awareness is another. The example cited, probably the person didn't know, was totally unknowing and thought that, I don't know what there is, an app or whatever, how you get a hold of these people, thought that car was coming for them. And I think that's how we deal with things, as opposed to look at penalties. And if the PDP is responsible, let's make them do their job. And they are not. Yeah.
Counselor Hobbs. Sorry. You know what, council, somebody else does it.
Thank you, and through the chair. I won't be supporting the motion as it reads right now. I will offer an alternative, depending on how this turns out. And it's really for the reasons stated. I have actually dealt with this quite a bit in my past. And if I just summarize it, I'm just not sure that even looking at penalizing victims is something I want to support, because I don't believe that would be the pathway that was chosen. So therefore, I don't believe in really making a motion that asks people to look at that. And I'll wait to see how this turns out, and then I might have a suggestion. Thank you.
Counselor Liu.
Thank you. I also am not comfortable going after what I view as the victims of this situation, this crime. I would like to do a referral to reach out to Dan Nomura, our liaison, and get him to address this and bring this up in a formal way with YVR, though.
Well, we can come back to you on that. Yeah. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion on the floor? Those opposed? It is defeated with Councillors McPhail, Liu, McNulty, and Hobbs in the opposition. Councillor Hobbs, you said you had a suggested motion?
Sure, through the chair. I think if you just look at what's written here, and if we crossed out the words "for passengers,"
So it would be that a letter be written to the, did you want the province or the PTSB or?
well, it would be the province, and I think the Passenger Transport Board would be part of it too, so we could add "and."
A letter be written to the province and the PTSB requesting an examination of penalties for illegal ride-hailing services.
Yeah, that could see as it is, I think. It's the second part that would probably be the key part. And I think if we just took out the words "for passengers using," and if we wrote that staff be directed to raise the possibility of penalties regarding illegal ride-hailing services, I think it would be, not service, or maybe, and then just leave the rest the same. So just cross out the words "for passengers using" and add in regarding the elimination of illegal ride-hailing.
And did you want to add a number 3 that encourage the PTSB to look at an educational program? Because I know Councillor McNulty brought that up, but it is something that has come up, and when we had Mr. Vanden Hemel here, I think that was something that he was very keen on, and, you know, I think at that time we talked about an educational program.
Thank you. That's an excellent point, because education is a key part of it, because I think a lot of people don't really know what they're getting into, as per the person that jumped into the back of MLA Yao's car. Oh, that also happened to my brother, by the way, although that person jumped into the front seat.
All right, so do you have those? All right, so that's been moved by Councillor Hobbs, is seconded by Councillor McNulty. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Councillor Liu, you want to make a referral?
Yeah, that staff reach out to our council, or, yeah.
Our YVR
council
rep.
liaison rep, Dan Nomura, and ask him to raise the issue of illegal ride-hailing services that are operating out of YVR, and that YVR respond to us.
Did you get that? Right. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Now, managers' reports. Are there any reports? Oh, none today. All right. So looking for adjournment. We are adjourned.